This is may turn out to be not the last meeting, but the penultimate meeting of the Tax Council. It's been almost 6 months since we were here, with the room slightly fuller than this to get started. And this group and a variety of really bright people, other bright people around the state of Georgia, some of you are in the room here, are to be thanked for the amount of analysis and the work that's been done, almost all of which you can see on our website. We ended up having 11 town hall meetings. We started out with 5, and 6 more towns said we got to have our meetings. So we went. And 6 council meetings. Our responsibility is to the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor neither of which that is. So we'll just turn it off. To deliver a report to them on Monday, which we will do. We will discuss it. The fact of the matter is that the recommendations are a little bit more far-reaching than perhaps we thought at the beginning of this discussion. And as a result, we've had to do a lot more analysis and calculation to come to conclusions. We expected to be at the quantitative side of the solution today, and we're not quite there. The devil being in the details, of course. I can tell you that we will have recommendations that will involve personal income tax, corporate income tax, sales tax exemptions, sales tax increases, services, cigarettes, communication services, motor fuel, and insurance. That pretty well covers waterfront. I'm sure it's a little more detailed than many of you may have expected at the outset, but I wanted to at least give you the fact that these recommendations are, we thought we'd try to do a 10-page report. It looks like it's going to be about 50 pages with appendices. That's another 710. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. So I'm going to give you, for those of you who weren't in Athens, if you can't see this screen right here, get to where you can, because if you will listen carefully to this report, you'll have pretty much a good sense of what we intend to do without getting into the specific language, which of course is going to be available to all of you on Monday afternoon when we give it to the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor. So, anybody else want to comment on this, fellas, ladies? No? Dave? Tuesday? No, maybe not. We're trying to work out our disclosures to be consistent with the law and with the preferences of the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor, and so we will be operating at their direction. As I told some of you before, this group right here is manufacturing, and the marketing is the Lieutenant Governor and Speaker. So when the time comes to talk, they'll be the ones doing the talking, at least. That's the plan right now. So we'd like to think, and another thing that I will say to you, that taken as a package, that we've tried to come as close to being revenue neutral as we possibly could. So we're sensitive to that notion in this state at this time. We believe that the approach that I'm about to describe to you in this report, or this report we gave to the legislature, incorporates current tax thinking around the country. It incorporates a competitive status with our surrounding states. And it incorporates the ability for businesses and the governments to plan with the assumption that they can count on what's there. So we want to minimize the minimize the upset. So I've told you the categories of things that we're going to talk about. We're also going to have some recommendations in the report that don't fall to specific taxes, but rather fall to things that need to be done. We're convinced that local taxes, particularly the property tax, are punishing to our citizens as currently constructed. But we don't have anything to say about that. We don't have anything other than a bully pulpit. We're convinced that inventory taxes, which are part of local property taxes, are anti-competitive to business, and yet they need to be dealt with. But that wasn't our purview either. So we're going to comment on things like that. We're going to comment on the relationship between state and local revenue collectors and how some of those things should be looked at, perhaps changed. And then we'll have specific recommendations on the tax piece. That is what we were here set to do. So if you're in Athens, you can go home, because I'm about to do the same thing. If you weren't in Athens, you've heard a little bit more today from what I've already said than you would have heard if you weren't there. We're down to the place where we're going to meet with the governor-elect, Lieutenant Governor Speaker. And please remember that the 10th, as it turns out, being the first day of the session, is also Inauguration Day. So we don't want to get in the way of what is obviously a celebratory time with some idiot discussion of something like taxes. So if you were in Athens and you want to check out, that's fine. If you weren't in Athens, or if you're with the media and didn't get a belly full of it in Athens, you're welcome to stick around. So are you ready? I'm ready. Back on the 14th of December, we were asked to attend and present to the biennial legislative retreat and to discuss, as well as we could discuss it, what the possibilities were for tax changes. As I told some of you who asked for press briefing afterwards, Jim, if you didn't pretty well get where we were going by this discussion, you probably don't have a good handle on taxes in Georgia. HB 1405 was signed into law on the 1st of June. It was initiated by the Speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor, and others, to deal with recommendations about tax policy over a 6-month period of time. Now, some of the lawyers here would say you can't make a good recommendation in 6 months, and then some of the legislators say you can't make a good recommendation in more than 4 weeks. But we did our best, and we will have those delivered to the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor on Monday. The members of the Tax Council are here. The Governor's not, but he's on this council. All of the Tax Council members deserve your undying thanks, because we met dozens of times at these public meetings, and all of us got paid zero. We didn't even get our expenses paid, so don't think we have a sort of conflict of interest here. But the mission was to study the current tax revenue structure and make recommendations. The idea being, can we make the tax structure more jobs friendly, more business friendly, more growth friendly, to try to deal with the fact that over the last 2 years, Georgia lost about 250,000 manufacturing jobs, which haven't come back. And secondly, we now know that states like South Carolina and Tennessee have policy groups strategizing about how they take away our businesses in Georgia. They're coming after us. We have been perceived by the business community as business friendly. We've been perceived as growth friendly. And a lot of what we've gotten are things that South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee wanted to get and didn't. I just told you about all that. We established some guiding principles, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, because you've heard about these. Just know that we've tried to embody those recommendations in our final deliberations. Go ahead. I would take note that we were, at this time, we were 49th. We still are 49th in the country in terms of the incidence of state taxes per capita. That means only one state, and I'm not sure who it is, taxes their citizens less than Georgia does on a per capita basis at the state level. Business already sees us to be business friendly. They see the things that need to be done to help people get jobs here as a trained workforce or a trainable workforce, transportation, infrastructure, quality of life factors, and so forth, all of which we rank high on in Georgia. In some cases, we rank best. The one where we're at the bottom is also important to them, and this is one thing that's not our purview necessarily, but when you keep cutting taxes and you keep cutting taxes, the place cut tends to be the education budget, which is half of the state's budget. So, and then the locals turn around and have to put the millage rate up on the property taxes, which drives people nuts. Site Selection magazine ranked us as 6th out of 50 as in terms of a good place to do business. Council on State Taxation ranked us 10th. I don't know what the differences were, but we rank right up there. It's good now. We can make it better. Go ahead. You got to believe that if we're going to do something meaningful, that the top 2 categories are the place to go fishing. And that's where we're going to go fishing. We're actually going to have something to say about all the rest of them, but no recommendation on things like property tax. We have said and we continue to believe that Georgia's at a crossroads. We believe that the way to be successful is to reduce income taxes and investment taxes and replace them with consumption taxes while maintaining a stable and diversified tax revenue. We can't do away with the income tax. There's no way the state can afford it. It's the largest single item. The question is where you take it from here. Do you try to start on a path of moving it downward or not? We think it's probably, we should. We expect this tax change that we're proposing to be an evolutionary process. The rating agencies who rate our bonds, and we are one of the nine AAA states in the country, are sensitive to the fact that we've got to replace the stimulus money and we need to rebuild reserves, but they like it and they have reaffirmed our AAA rating now on the expectation that we'll find a way to do the second 2 things. I'm an old, broken down country banker, so I can tell you that, you know, a drop from a AAA to a AA plus or a AAA minus is probably 10 basis points on every dollar of debt we've got in the state. So it's an important thing for us not to lose is a AAA rating. Comparatively, if we have a $2 billion or $1 billion hole, California's got a $17 billion hole and their bonds are junk. So good news, we're not in California. Evolutionary process means that don't expect all the changes to come at the same time. Now just look at this. Offset income taxes with consumption taxes, maintain diverse tax revenue streams, seek stability of structural recurring revenue streams. The income tax in Georgia, by the way, personal income tax and corporate income tax is notoriously volatile. What happens is that when the legislature is confronted with a revenue estimate with volatile sources, they have to deal with that accordingly, and frankly, we ought to be able to give them a better option than that. So we're looking for stability. We'll probably talk about expanding the base of tax-paying entities in anticipation of lowering the rate. We want to avoid tax pyramiding, which is why I said we wanted to avoid taxing inputs on agriculture and manufacturing that ultimately are going to be paid for by sales tax at the end, and you don't want a pyramid. We believe that if our recommendations are taken as a whole, that we will improve our competitive tax structure with the states around us. South Carolina is going through the same thing we're going through right now. They'd initially decided to put caps on sales taxes and ultimately decided to take them off. They've done a number of things that are aimed strategically going at Georgia industry, going at our industry and getting to move South Carolina. We've had examples of current industry here moving their expansion plants to Alabama and South Carolina, principally because we have a tax on fuel, energy used in manufacturing. P.S. If you're a carpet manufacturer, that's about 40% of your cost of goods. We expect to recommend using tax credits, although there's mixed feeling about how effective these things are. They're a fact of life. and everyone from our governor on down agrees that we wish it weren't this way because it becomes a beggar thy neighbor strategy, and sort of how low can you go if you're a government entity in attracting business by giving them more goodies. Nonetheless, tax credits are necessary evil, and we'll make some recommendations about how those are used. And finally, philosophically, we're saying preserve the AAA bond rating at all costs, because that is it's just dead money out the door. It's like tearing up dollar bills and throwing them down the drain. You just spend more money for the same bonds. You should see this as a statement of the problem, and when you see our report, you'll see what we're going to try to do about it. Go ahead. Corporate income tax, we discovered, is not nearly the driver in businesses' decisions to locate here as we thought. Personal income tax is 2 times as important or more than corporate income tax rates are. And quality of life, trained labor force, environmental quality, infrastructure, and the like are higher even than that. The tax credit structure is complicated. And since we've said that, you might want to expect that we're going to try to uncomplicate it. And here's how. This is, it's not like we didn't lead with our recommendations. We believe, and I'm not sure if economic development goes along with this, but we believe that the legislature has a stake in this. Anytime you give a business a tax credit, somebody else didn't get one, and somebody else is paying the taxes that the guys who got the credit don't pay. Some of these credits have been around for a very long time, including exemptions have been around for a long time too, and they just don't make any sense anymore. We believe that the legislature has a role to play in this, that they ought to start with sort of a cap on how much they think we should invest. It's a negative appropriation, as you know. And then simplify the process of using them. You can, as we sit here, you can see we reported all this stuff back in the 14th of December. I don't think anybody got it, but it's okay. Go ahead. Here's what we might suggest. The existing exemptions for ag and inputs and manufacturing inputs, things are raw materials that come into manufactured goods that ultimately get sold at a tax rate. We need to encourage the state, we will encourage the state, to make some of those exemptions permanent so that businesses can know that they don't have to worry about them being eliminated. We've gone through with our crack team of 3 people led by Mr. Roy Fickling, who will make recommendations about sunsetting and about eliminating and about continuing. There are 110 to 117 exemptions to sales taxes in Georgia, and some of them, as Roy will tell you, don't make a heck of a lot of sense in today's environment. I mentioned Roy's name because I don't want you to blame me for that. That's Fickling, F-I-C-K-L-I-N-G. Macon, Georgia, call him. We believe that in order to avoid getting in this situation again, that exemptions and credits should probably be sunsetted. Larry O'Neill has basically started that practice as chairman of Ways and Means recently, and you know, Roy Fickling, that's F-I-C-K-L-I-N-G, has, oh yeah, Roger Tutterow was on that. Who else was there? Dave Shokus, yeah, right. Keep those guys in mind when you get the report. We're going to sunset, Larry's basically been sunsetting all the new ones, and we think we need to go back and look at the past. Otherwise, exemptions become memorialized in stone and they never get looked at again. So we think this policy will improve fairness and transparency of the We also believe that there should be a better way for taxpayers to get their complaints heard. Right now, if it's an assessment or an appraisal or a local tax commission or whatever, the ability to get into Superior Court is very cumbersome, and sometimes it crowds the dockets of Superior Courts all over the state, and sometimes these tax cases, which aren't rapes and murders, get pushed to the back of the docket, and people are sitting there with disputes that last for years. We're going to recommend, as I showed you here, that we establish a tax court outside of the Revenue Department in the Department of Justice that exclusively deals with tax code matters. We're not sure that it'll come out this way. It's one of the things we're still talking about, but the only way we can get at the idea of inventory tax, which we think is heinous, is that close enough? Yeah. Is to offer some alternatives to local government to finance their operation, maybe with SPLOS or something else, if they were willing to roll back the inventory taxes. This, in fact, in all of our deliberations procedures, is the most anti-business, anti-competitive feature in our tax package. This is all in recommendations, but it is clear that the Department of Revenue struggles with its relationship with local governments and city governments, and likewise the other way around. And it shouldn't be that way. We've got to work hard with the new Revenue Commissioner and his staff to reach out to local and municipal governments to get our information flow in harmony, to get our tax structures in harmony, and to work together on some of these issues of non-collection that are there. They're not probably as big as people thought they were. They're not $700 or $800 million, but there's several hundreds of millions of dollars out there, maybe $100 million of uncollected taxes that just slip through the cracks. And we can't afford that. We're also going to recommend, and it won't be any of us, I can assure you that, that every 4 years or so we have a review like we've just done, that somebody does it, that they refer to the previous work and that they look at the current tax structure as it is and give the legislature a recommendation about it, and to formally establish a look back, which we really don't have now substantively, at all the credits that were granted and all the exemptions that were granted to see if the state got what it paid for. We also believe that the legislature has a role to play in exemptions, and so they do the authorization. Why don't they do the negative authorization? So we're going to make a recommendation along those lines too. Our goal was to make Georgia's tax system as business and jobs friendly, to grow our state. We've got to grow out of this. We can't cut out of this. My hat's off to the legislature and those members who are here, and to the Speaker and our Governor, Sonny Perdue, who've basically reduced expenditures by 20% over the last 2 years, roughly, give or take, because the money wasn't there. We don't have the problems in Georgia that New Jersey has, or that New York has, or California has, and a lot of other states, because our legislature and our governor have been fiscally conservative. We're lucky. Ours is only a sort of $1 billion to $2 billion gap with the feds, and others is much, much larger, and in fact, there's just no way for them to come around to it. We believe that if the recommendations we present are adopted, that we can show a way forward to a revenue stream that's stable and an opportunity that is better than our neighbors. We've said, and I said at the outset, that we intend philosophically to be revenue neutral. What you must expect is that the things that we're talking about adding to will grow faster than things we're talking about subtracting from. That's what we believe. So, and transparency and fairness, likewise, one of the things we'll recommend, which the legislature may or may not go along with, is that credits and exemptions, sales tax exemptions, be introduced in the first year of the session and lay on the table until the second year of the session. That way, the Financial Research Institute can actually spend some time, or others, policy advisors, can spend some time doing the financial analysis and the what-ifing and so forth to have a better sense of what we gave up when we gave it up, and then you can vote it on year 2. Or if it's something that is absolutely an emergency, that we would recommend you vote it in year 1, but you have a supermajority to do it. So these are sorts of things that you're going to see come out. There's a lot more detail than this, which is why we don't have it here today. But I didn't want you to go away completely empty-handed. We've told you the gist of where it's going, and you'll be able to see when we finish on Monday how far we went. Now, that's the story. Did everybody get it? Okay, for members of the legislature here who followed us around the state, I can't thank you enough. It's been a good ride, and I hope it's been helpful to you as it has been to us. I feel like an idiot for saying this, but does anybody have any questions? Well, it's almost there. We'll have it when the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor have it. You'll have it. We'll try to get the word out to everybody when we post it on the website, but that'll likely be Monday. Okay? With that, council members, anybody have anything you want to add? Skeeter? Roy Fickling, F-I-C-K-L-I-N-G.
You told us not to say
that. Anything you want to say? Suzanne, I know you have to say something.
Because I normally don't behave, right? I just would like to publicly, on behalf of the council, thank you for your leadership and your chairmanship. You've carried some heavy buckets of water, and we really appreciate your leadership. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You may want to withhold that applause until Monday afternoon. Anything else? Economists? Dave? How about it, Chris? Everybody's quiet. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you Monday afternoon.